superstars, welcome back to another episode of Word Up with Danny Katz. Today I am joined by Epiphanio. Epiphanio has an amazing podcast over on jorn.tv where he shares daily contemplations of the gene keys, of the lines, of the spheres, of the pathways. He has recorded well over 500 episodes, and for anyone who likes to geek out on the gene keys, like I do, this is such a valuable resource. He also does interviews with visionaries who are making the world more wonderful, and it was an honor to have him on the show today to talk about the gene keys, to talk about the state of the world, to talk about being a dissenter in the face of global apocalypse. Before we dive into the episode, I'm reminding you to click that subscribe button, to like, to share, to comment. This episode is divided in half, as all my episodes are. The first half is available free on all the podcast platforms as well as on YouTube. You can find the second half on both of my paid membership platforms, Locals and Patreon, where my paid supporters get access to all of my second half conversations, oodles of bonus content, monthly drop-ins with me, etc., etc., etc. That does it for housekeeping. Buckle up and prepare to enjoy my conversation. Did you vote? Do you play that game?
Today I'm just moved to Arizona, so I have not, I'm not part of the state yet. I'm still cooking my papers and everything. But I want to. You have to. Because there's levels of reality. You gotta participate on the physical one, and do your work on the spiritual. Are you recording already?
I'm already recording. I'm sick like that.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. Sorry. Yeah. So the way that I do it is usually it's just like super informal, conversational, you and me getting to know one another. And is there anything specifically that's up for you right now that like you're super passionate about?
Just love, that's what we need. That's what I'm passionate about.
Okay.
Above everything, it's like we gotta do our work and just heal ourselves and show up.
Have you always been passionate about love, or is that something new?
Well, I have. I think that through time you get a different definition of it. You grow up on a culture, and then you get ideas of what is, and then little by little you were discovering what it is, and then the more you learn, the more you realize that. For example, I think I'm not sure, but I think the people from Inuit people have like 40 different names for love or something like that.
Ooh, I want to look this up.
I'm not sure it's exactly like that, but it's something like that. So they have a definition for all of these different expressions of love. So it's like, what I mean by love is, recognizing that we're all one organism. Mm-hmm. and that it's so advanced that it's simultaneously spread through all of humanity and all of the universe, but it's kind of like getting ahead of putting yourself in a place of like, this is me and that's you, but we are really just one thing, and not that you have that realization all the time, but that's what you're contemplating constantly, and then you start getting glimpses of it.
Mm-hmm. Please continue.
No, go ahead.
Well, were you always attuned to like a second tier spiral dynamics we consciousness, or was there a moment on your path where you expanded into that knowingness and embodiment of our interconnectedness?
That's good. I think that somewhere in my early 20s, I kind of like I think I was 16 when kind of like that, my journey like took off to the real layer, no? And for a while, it was just the realization that the biggest realization was that we create our own reality. That was the biggest thing. And then it took me a while to really realize that what's really most important, yes, everybody's creating their own reality. That's very important. And that's kind of like basic. You have to learn that. But beyond that is what's really important is to realize that everything already exists. We're just rearranging ourselves, rearranging matter, and the more careful and kind and it's like you're making art. I mean, there's different kinds of ways to make art, but I'm talking about kind of like a dance, like you start falling in love with making art, and so the way you start treating reality, the way you start treating people becomes an art, and kind of like that goes to a whole other level, like gradually that kind of started becoming, because I've been doing art, my whole life, but it kind of like evolved to that point where you realize that living life is an art, and the greatest piece of art is our relationships, that's kind of like, it's been gradual and more, and when I kind of ran into the Gene Keys, that kind of like really shifted my perspective from how can I manifest what I want into what do I have to give. And that was a huge shift in consciousness, because you can't get really stuck on the like, I want a Ferrari and I want $1 million, and there's nothing wrong with that, but at some point you realize that those are toys. The real juice of life is those moments that you spend with people, and you're having fun, and the life is, I mean, that's when life is good, when you're hanging out with good people, having good time.
Mm-hmm. So there's so many places I want to go, but what gifts have you come here to share with the world?
Everything, everything that I have. I mean, it's like the more I dive into the Gene Keys, I was telling you last time that I see the hologenetic profile really just as the entrance of the house, like the hall. And the more you dive into everything, it's like I'm kind of just seeing these are just snapshots. The 64 Gene Keys are just snapshots of kind of like archetypes of a larger ways of that consciousness expands through reality. But when you realize that you can dive into all of these areas, you realize you have all of the gifts. The 64, it's the whole thing, and it's so exciting to just like realize that life is so much more than our consciousness is fixed on the things of the matrix, and it's like, it's time to explore how deep can we go and connect with people.
Mm-hmm. I'm really intrigued to learn more about your Gene Keys journey. And you just said something that I don't want to get too far away. You mentioned, because there is the hologenetic profile with its 11 spheres. And I notice in my time in the Gene Keys community, people can get really hung up on like, well, my keys and I have blah, 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 blah. And I think a lot of us forget that we really do have them all. So how do you like wrangle any like that tension between like the urge to identify with what's in our profile and then the reality, which is we all have all of them?
Well, number one, I don't necessarily believe in astrology. I think that astrology is off by a constellation. And so I'm the kind of person that I listen to everything, and I take and I just pay attention to everything, and I kind of have like a mixer of music. Where you have different tracks, right? I have a kind of like a mixer in my mind or in my heart, right? And I have all these tracks with different things, and I'm kind of mixing stuff and taking a little bit of less of that, a little bit of this. I'm gonna put a little bit of treble on that, a little more bass on that one, and that's kind of how I go. And so I look at the hologenetic profile, and what I'm really doing, I'm using it as a resonance tool. Like I definitely, I feel that there's definitely a lot of wisdom in its structure, and I ultimately, the way that I ultimately see is that you can see God in everything. And so if you're looking at the hologenetic profile as the hologenetic profile with the structure that it has, and this is the reason why I love the gene keys, the way that I see it is because I don't see it as a standard. I see it as a box of hints, as a map, as a tool. And so what I'm looking into, for example, I'm looking at my culture, right? And I understand that that's the way that I connect with my fractal soul family, right? And I love that, and I love that. And so my contemplation, what I see is my consciousness is observing that concept. And so it's not necessarily the hologenetic profile, but I'm taking that idea and now I'm putting it in my attention, and now God's shining through that, and then it's going to bounce back and ripple back the information that I want. So I definitely use the hologenetic profile, and I don't care that it comes from, that it uses astrology or human design. I don't really know that much on human design. I know that I'm a 5/1 and I'm a manifestor generator, but that's about it. You too? You're a 5/1 too? But that's about as much as I know. And I just love, numbers and exploring, making connections and the programming partners. And so I see it as a game, as a toy, like like I'm having fun with it. It's like a board game. Mm-hmm. But the real power, it's not in the system or in the guru or in the teacher or in the system, whatever. The real power is in your focus, because that's when you're really tapping into the quantum field. That's the way that I see it. Your attention on anything, it's like the internet back in the day when we didn't have like Twitter and stuff. You would go through these websites, and then they would go through a link that leads you to another link, and next night, five hours later, you're somewhere else, and it kind of like it connects you. And that's exactly how consciousness works. And so that's the real power that I see, because the other thing that I see that Richard did magnificently is that he created so much. I mean, I haven't even gone through the dream arc, and I want to go through that whole thing because I've always been into shamanism and stuff. And so I see all of these as tools. Do not give your power away to it. And I see it in everything, I mean, obviously it happens too in the Jinky community, just like it happens on Christianism, or it happens on, yoga. People's personality begins to start putting things in boxes, because we want to find that security, that safety, and it doesn't exist. Life is wild, and so what I do for myself is I see it as like a compass, like a tool, a flashlight, and it's very ordered, and I'm kind of ordered a little bit inside of myself. So I like that order and that vastness, and then I go in my own trips. I'm writing a book, and I have my characters have gene keys, and then that helps me write their dialogue, and then I start making connections, and maybe that one goes with that one because it's the programming partner of this one. And so I have fun with that stuff. I think that's the most important. Just have fun, realize that everybody's is where they are, and they're doing the best they can. And just the way that I see myself is I've been there. I've been the fanatic, and so I understand that it's a phase. At some point, you just find this moment where you need to define your own voice and make your own specific mix of the final track, right? And I use all things for that.
Cool. Well, I'm a huge fan of your podcast. For those listening, Epiphanio has done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes on all the gene keys, the programming partners, the lines, the pathways, the spheres. It's such a brilliant tool. I wish that I had found your podcast back in my early days of the Gene Keys, because I feel like I would be so much farther in my understanding now. So I'm curious to know, like, how you found your way to the keys, and what was that like one breakthrough where you were like, oh my God, I need to learn more? And then what inspired you sharing your contemplations through this podcast?
Well, that was 2013, 2014. I had a band. We were doing some sort of kind of jazz rock thing, and
What do you play in your band?
in that band I was playing guitar. Um, and it went downhill, and that was the last band that I had, because I hadn't had a band in a while. I've had several bands throughout my life, and I felt kind of depleted, because I love music, I love playing music, but and specifically with people. I love playing with people is the best, and I also I love dance music. So it's interesting, because it's like there's really no people on dance music. It's just the DJ or whatever the beat. You can make it yourself, right? So at the tail end of that one, I started kind of going downhill, and that eventually ended with a very the kind of like the darkest part of my dark night, which it happened gradually, because he had been cooking for a while, and so, but what happened was that I started writing my book, because it's a novel, and it's it comes out from my love of sci-fi, and my kind of dissatisfaction with the metallicness of it, like it's always very like constricted, and so I kind of started imagining what would it be if I were to take, for example, did you ever see this movie House Moving Castle by it's an anime movie by made by Studio Ghibli. Oh my God, you gotta see that. It's like it's a fantasy. It has nothing. It's not sci-fi at all, but the lusciousness of the openness of it, and the quirkiness of it's just Studio Ghibli is one of my favorite film companies. Well, anime companies out there. Anyway, I had this idea that I wanted something to be sci-fi, definitely, founded in science, but at the same time that science morphed to such a degree that it was magic, but it is still science, and you could prove it, with, not necessarily with the science that we have now, because it's a lot of gibberish, but really when you start understanding spirit and realize that everything is ultimately science, And so I had this idea of making something that was big and happy, not necessarily happy, because just not that constrictive sci-fi that you're always on the ship and there's like closing core. I wanted plants and I wanted spaceships, but I wanted trees in space. I mean like a whole other thing, and that was a sort of escape of my. I wanted to just kind of like, my mind was, the personality was just really hitting, and so. But when I get creative, when I play music, when I make art, I can dive into spirit, right? And it totally writes. It helps me write. And so what happened was that I started thinking about the name for my book, and the first thing that came to my mind was the Manifestors. And that somehow, because I when I have ideas about names for like websites or something, I Google it, is the website is available. And this time I somehow ran into human design, because that was the only place anywhere that had the word manifestor. Mm-hmm. And so I found human design, and I found my human design thing, and I realized, then I thought, oh, this is interesting. And I looked at, I was a manifestor generator and stuff like that, and that kind of stayed there. I wasn't really necessarily happy with the name. It was just a thing that kind of led to another thing, and then next thing I am I don't know if a few months or a year or something happened, I found out that there was something related to human design on an interview with Regina Meredith on Gaia. But it was actually Richard Rudd talking about the Gene Keys. And so I saw the interview, and that's how I found about the Gene Keys. I saw it and I'm like, is this has to do with this human design thing? I didn't understand that there was a difference between human design and Gene Keys. And then I got the book, and that's when I had the idea that I was going to well, I got into the book. I didn't quite get it because it's a big fat book, and it's, you know, it's like kind of like became like the door, you know, like it's stuck for the door. It's like it just sits there on the, it's like as a weight, you know. And I got the hologenetic profile, but I didn't quite dive into it. I'm the kind of person that I eat, you know, I start from the middle and then go to the beginning and then to the back and then come back. So I'm not, if you tell me start here, I start there, you know? So it's like, and I start making my own connections. So that sat there for about a year or so, and I got more and more depressed. And then I started painting, and that helped me a lot. And then I continued writing. And then at some point I realized that the main thing that I realized about the Gene Keys is that it's literally a list of attitudes. And so I had learned earlier in my life that everything is attitude. And so if you could really understand and change your attitudes, you would change everything. And so, but I never quite understood what attitude was, you know, okay, change your attitude. What does that even mean, you know? And then now I have a cheat sheet, 64 attitudes with like the path, you know, go from here to here. And then there's this other one that it's like, you know, the gift of God. But that became so clear, you know, like, okay, you go from here to here. And so I got really into it, but I found it incredibly complex and long and vast. And I was like, when you're in front of a huge mountain and you go like, how the fuck am I gonna climb that thing? You know, it's like, it felt overwhelming. And then I had the idea, well, why don't I use the Gene Keys to make my characters of my book? And so that way I can start kind of playing with it and having fun and learning about it. And that's how I started diving into the Gene Keys, because I wanted to write my story. And then I found it incredibly profound how I could build very multi-layered characters that were not just one thing, but they had all this depth with them, you know. And but I had the idea, that was the original thought, right? But then I figured out that it's like, you know, just reading a page takes me half an hour, you know. And so it's like,
me 2 weeks.
I know, it's incredibly dense. And
hey, superstars, I'm weighing in to remind you to hit that subscribe button, to like, to share, to comment, and to click the notification bell so that you will be alerted every time I post a new video.
And so I dived into it, and I started making charts of connections, of numbers, because I love numbers, and I would spend hours just making charts of Gene Keys that are connected with this and that, and that kind of started.
What is this and that? Like, break that down. What are you making charts of?
I have my characters, and I have scenes, and I have you know, conversations, and I got, well, this one goes with that one because of this Gene Key that will go with this one. And if I have these characters having this, you know, conflict here, I better choose this because they have the EQ here, and then they have the SQ here, and so they're going to have this specific kind of, you know, loop. And but, you know, here's the funny thing. Go ahead. Go
well,
ahead.
yeah, I got to stop you here because I'm a writer and I know how complicated and intellectually taxing it is to just write a book. But it sounds like are you creating hologenetic profiles for all your characters, like fully built out?
No, I have my characters in my mind. They come, you know, I'm imagining them, right? Yeah. I have a vague idea of what they are. So they already come with their, you know, something. And then I imagine somebody somewhere in history that that kind of resembles that, and then I go get their gene keys, their hologenetic profile, and then I start using that.
So do you have, is it like in your nature to make things really, really, really complicated? Or is it just with this book?
I guess a little bit, yes. For a long time, yes. But at the same time, I kind of like, it was the beginning of the book was kind of like a distraction from my dark night. But then what happened was that I realized that I really, really, really wanted to master the 64 attitudes in myself. And I also realized that it was going to be incredibly difficult because I'm a very playful person. And so it was very, very mental, very, very, you know, a lot of dense content, right? So I kind of invented a way to play with them, to play and learn, you know, and so it eventually just became a way for me to learn all of this stuff while I'm having fun, because it's a whole other level to study this stuff when you're actually thinking how my characters are going to be. I'm contemplating them.
Right.
You see? And so I'm putting my attention, but it's also a game at the same time, and it's fun and it's art, and eventually what I found out is that, because that was the original idea, you know, like take the entire hologenetic profile and they're going to become that. But then I realized that, you know, no matter how I tried, that was incredibly complicated. So what I'm doing now is more like I have my character and I need text or I need dialogue, and then I go look at the profile and I get hints, you know, work on this and work on that, or use this or use that. But it's not like my characters are not exactly the hologenetic. They're them, and I'm kind of taking ideas from their profile, ultimately.
That's fascinating. And so do you see that expediting your own mastery and understanding of the keys? Was that able to like
absolutely
accelerate your understanding?
Oh, that changed everything. Because now I have a project. It's like, I mean, yes, studying the gene keys by themselves is a project, but now it's a fun project for me, because I'm you know, I like to have fun. I'm just like, I'm not a serious person, you know. I mean, sometimes I can get serious when, you know, when things are serious, I'm serious, but most of the time I'm really just looking for how can I have fun, you know? And so it's really helping me, and that's another thing I really think about things is how heavy we are about many things, you know. It's like, if we were to have a different education system where it, you know, really focused on what the kids want to do, which is to have fun, you know, take them to nature so that they can learn from nature, which actually knows what it's doing. No, we don't fucking know anything, you know. It's like, so it is working. It really expedited, but so that I can get to your second part of your question, unless you have something to add to that.
No, please continue.
It eventually, here's what happened. I started doing that, and I continued doing that, and but I'm coasting, you know. I'm coasting. I'm not really, I know that I have a purpose, a spiritual purpose to do here, and really what ultimately what happened, that took years. I went down to the dark night, the darkest spot, you know. Painting helped me get out of that one, and kind of the book took a back burner, and I kind of shifted a little bit. I left the gene keys and the book for about 2-3 years, and I painted, and then I come back, and then I come back and I'm working, but at the same time, when the COVID thing hit, actually no, let me backtrack a little bit. Q showed up in around 2017, I think, and I started listening to people in YouTube probably 2018, you know. So I'm because I've been struggling since 1997 with knowing what's going on in the world, and having no way of doing anything about it. I'm like, the shit's hitting the fan, I can't do anything about it.
And what clued you in 97 to what was to come with the world?
I got a book. I got a book. My father died in 96, and my half sister gave me a book, and that really opened me up to the idea that, you know, we are you know, divine beings, and we are here on a spiritual journey, and we create our own reality, and that was the beginning of my spiritual journey, and eventually, the more I dig that, I found, you know, a very it started going that direction, and eventually I unraveled the sweater, and I figured out, you know, I found out what is going on at a whole level, you know, but I didn't know the specifics. I just knew, and I also had an experience with my aunt in the 80s. She was a lawyer, and she was I think she got invited to one of these elite rituals or some shit like that, but she freaked out, and she got really depressed, and she started saying they're trying to put like a debit card number on everybody, and it's the number of the beast, and she got really Christian, and you know, went downhill from there. Not that the Christians is anything wrong, because Christianity is great for many people. It works. My mom is very Christian. She's a very beautiful person, but she went downhill, and she got cancer, died. And so that kind of always hit me, because she was my favorite aunt when I was a kid. She was really happy and really nice, and then she got really, really afraid and sad and depressed. So I never could understand that. But then years later, it's 1997, 98, I found about this stuff, and it correlates. So I had something that I had experienced in my life before that, and so I went downhill. I'm like, I want to know what's going on. And back then it was still, you know, just the debit card. Now we know the debit card was the beginning of that, and we got the phones, and now there's the vaccine, right? But come 2017, I know this is going on, and suddenly we got Q, and I'm thinking, because now we got Trump, right? And so he's really you know, out of the establishment, you know, he's his own person. And you know, I understand what's going on. Is like they hate him because he's not playing the game. He doesn't have blackmail. You know, if you know, that's the main thing. You know, if you don't have blackmail, they can't control you. And so otherwise they would have already released it, you know, by now. And so we got Q, and I get super excited because I'm thinking it's coming out finally. Oh my God. Because I've been freaking out, just holding back so much for so long, and just being so afraid, like afraid because it wasn't just that, it was cataclysmics and everything you hear down the prophecies and everything. And I realized, you know, that's what you really have to go through, your fear of dying. And in all its iterations, it's not just the physical death, but the spiritual death, the social death, you know, all of these areas. And ultimately just I got to the point where I couldn't really handle. That was the reason, other of the reasons why I wanted to write my book, to just really find a way to put all of this stuff somewhere, and kind of find some catharsis, some healing myself. I'm trying to heal myself, and I do painting and all that stuff. That's really what art is for, is a self-healing tool. And so then what I'm doing is, in 2017, I get to start hooking. 2018, actually, I got to start listening to all of this stuff, and I'm like, finally, oh my God. It was a huge relief. I'm feeling it's coming out. We're winning. Finally, the thing's gonna come out, because I've been waiting for this stuff, you know, almost 20 years, because the 97 to 27, that's 20 years, you know, I've been on this one. And in
that time, did you have community who was on the same page and who understood what was coming down the pipeline, or were you holding this by yourself?
I had community. If I wanted, I definitely had support, but at the same time, I didn't, because you kind of change. You know, you go through your spiritual life, you go through the gurus and the teachers, and there's their communities, and so you have connections there. but at some point you change and you're like, I want to, find my own way of living. It's like, there's things that at some point you go like, well, this doesn't make sense, or, it's getting weird. And, and it's like, I want to, do my own thing. And I mean, I've the thing about, maybe about this, the thing about being a 5-1 is that you really get your radiance from being alone, and so it's like, for me, it's
what is your radiance?
My radiance is what's it called, patience. It's impatience, patience, and timelessness. Jinky number 5.
Okay.
What's your radiance?
28.
28. I just went through the 28 a couple of days ago on the podcast. That's powerful. Oh my God, the fear of death. Woo.
Deep one.
Deep one.
Yeah.
And line 1, right? That's the line 1.
Yep.
Yes. So for me, it's very interesting because my radiance comes when I'm patient. And so when I'm by myself creating, either I'm making music or I'm painting or I'm writing. So it's like, I'm not the kind of person. I also dance. So there was a long time, probably from 2005 to 2012 or something, that I danced a lot, this ecstatic dance. So I had a big community, but not to the degree that you could actually tell the whole story. They're just great people with an open heart. You can dance. But the one thing I found out, just like you did, was when the time came for me to step up in the Facebook soapbox and say, everybody's like, I'm friend. It's like, and at that point you realize, I fuck. Because, and now I understand, it's completely dismantling their entire reality. It's like everything that their true life is, it's not true. And so it's for them, it's hard for really to handle it. So what we're going to be seeing in the next few years is they're going to get it, because it's coming, and it's like, there is no way out of it. But I didn't know that. So yeah, I lost all of my community. I guess I could have always find my community, because I'm very outgoing. So I'm not the kind of person that stops talking to. I can talk to anybody. I can make friends everywhere. So that's never been a problem for me. But when you have a degree of not only understanding of what the shed is, but you're also very, kind of like, I'm kind of silly, so it's like most of people that are involved in that kind of stuff, they're like very serious and and so I'm not like that. I like to have fun and laugh and party, and I also address the stuff that's important, right? So that kind of thing, I had to kind of not compartmentalize myself, but kind of find different people where I could express different parts of myself with. Mm-hmm. And I took, that's what I could get. So I took it, but I've always really looked forward to really hang out with people that would have the entire of it, like that's kind of my dream, Yeah. And, but to come back to where I was just going, so because I think that's the most important part. How did I start the podcast? Is that I'm in 2018, and I'm watching videos on YouTube for a Q and everything, and I'm excited. I'm like, it's happening finally. Everything's gonna come out, and I'm like, this is it, And then 2019, they started deplatforming everybody, and I'm starting getting a lot of like, no, especially because of the COVID thing. That's when it really hit, and it hit a little bit before that, but when the whole thing really happened, I think what's 2020, when did COVID started? Beginning of 2019, right?
2020.
2020, okay. But no, it started before, because that's when, right, you're right, yes, 2020. And at the beginning, I'm at my house, and I'm in lockdown, because you don't want to touch doorknobs and stuff like that, because from the stuff that I read, these fuckers could actually like release the bioweapon. The first months I didn't quite digested that it wasn't real. I thought there was something, But at the same time, I was like, I mean, fuck it, But at the same time, and so there was a very specific what's it called, a post from Q that really woke me up, because I was smoking a lot of weed back then. Like, I was just couch potato, just freaking out, but medicating myself at the same time, and kind of like coasting, not really getting anything done, just surviving, and this was when it hit me. I'm like, it's happening. It's fucking happening. There is a bioweapon. We don't know what it is. The shit's hitting the fan. Everybody's in their house, and I'm fucking stoned, and it just dawned on me. I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I am gonna do my best to show up and do something, whatever the fuck I can, because I couldn't. I mean, I was just a dude, I'm like, what can I do? And so I just said, I'm gonna just talk about this stuff, because I've been talking about on Facebook to my friends, and they've been befriending me, and so it's like my friends list getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But I'm thinking, I gotta do something. So I got this video. I found somehow I got to meet this what's called this ex-KGB agent explaining what is subversion.
Oh, Yuri Bezmenov.
Yuri Bezmenov, yes. And so I posted the video. I made my website, because that's what I used to do. I used to make websites. And I made my website, and I posted, and it's kind of like just, format, blog format. And I posted that video. And then I just went ahead and kind of like gave my commentary on the video and turned it into podcasts, and decided that I was just going to do a podcast. For many years, I've done tried many online businesses and stuff. So I had kind of studied a little bit of how to start a podcast and all that stuff. Not as much as I wish, but I was also for a while. I'm still a little bit, not much, but I kind of like follow a lot. Gary V.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So kind of this idea of kind of a little bit of obsessiveness of like just like becoming massive, and then I thought, I mean, fuck it, I'm just gonna post it every day, Monday through Sunday, and I just decided that I was looking for some peace of mind, peace in my heart, that I'm thinking, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if these fuckers are gonna blow the whole thing up, and I don't want to just be sitting here with a fucking dab here. It's like just waiting, and then they just take me out and dump me into the train or some shit like that. If I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go down fighting. And so so then I decided I was just gonna write. I'm sorry, I was just gonna do a podcast, because when I write, I take a long time writing. I tried that before with posts, and it was it took me so long. I'm kind of a little bit, perfectionist on my writing. And so then I thought, just record, because also video is another thing you have to like set up the whole thing. And I just got into video finally. I should have gotten earlier, but I decided, well, if I'm going to do it, it's going to be audio. It has to be audio, because it's easy, and I'm not going to edit it. I'm not going to think what I'm going to say. I'm just going to, I mean, if at the beginning, I had several ideas, and then I realized that it's a lot of work to actually prepare for a podcast. And then I started doing the news. Kind of, that was the next thing that I did. I kind of just, and then it was an hour at least of preparing, watching the news. But what happened was, after kind of like maybe a couple months or something, I started getting a little bit heavy, like I'm looking at the news all the time, and it's like, and then I'm reporting on it, and it's a war, it's moves and counter moves, one day you're winning, the next thing they're beating you up, and it's like, it started at some point. What really hit me is what I asked myself, yes, okay, I want to do a podcast every day, because it's kind of like, it makes me feel good, it gives me peace. But what I really want to talk about is God. I mean, that was kind of my kind of like the moment I look at myself and say, what do you really want to talk about? And then I thought, but I cannot really talk about God that much after 5 episodes. I'll be repeating myself. And then I thought, the gene keys. And then it was like the massive amount of information. I can't just review this stuff. And I'm going to have episodes for like the end of the world. It's like forever. And that's how it started. And I wanted to, because, I've been already starting and doing a lot of things with my book. But the daily practice really changes everything. Like since I started really diving into the work and the hologenetic profile and contemplating it, they get to you. Richard is right. I mean, he actually said it. He's like, the biggest trick that I've come up with is come up with more stuff for people to put their attention on this stuff. And he's a genius. I love him. I'm incredibly grateful because he got it right. Just it's so vast, but at the same time, it's like it takes. I don't know if everybody has this same thing, but it took me a while for really dive into it. It has a thick skin, and but it really at this point now I'm coasting. I'm loving every day. That I'm doing this. So that's a very long answer. Sorry, it took me forever to go.
No, it was awesome. There's so many fun pieces that I want to play with. So you have created 2 structures for yourself to develop your Gene Keys mastery, your book and your podcast. So what in your profile points to this being a go-to strategy of yours?
I don't see my podcast. I don't see my profile as triggering my physical actions. I do see if we were to look at the physical aspects, the life's work and the evolution. Basically, I have my life's work is Gene Key 37. So what has helped me in my own contemplation is realize that I'm here to become balanced. Mm-hmm. The balance of male and female, of doing and being, of releasing and making happen. And I love that because I am that. And so that really resonates with me at a physical level and in what I'm here bringing. And so I bring that in my podcast. And that's the big part of my book. And that's literally, the more I contemplate that, the more I realize that is the future. That is literally how we get out of this hole, because we're stuck because we're very logical, very regimented, compartmentalized civilization. Mm-hmm. we need order, but not that much. It's out of balance. You need to bring that female back and just become the archetypes of what it is, time and space, and let go of this rigidity that we have, right?